It was a great presentation. It was a great presentation at the committee, actually. Right, I think the next one is 13. Yeah? Capital Endowment Fund. Okay, can I have a mover, Ewan? Or Yanni? Did you want to move it?
Yeah.
Right, second? Sorry, okay. Do you want to third it? Okay, mover and seconder. Do you want to speak to it?
No, only to answer questions. We're perfectly willing to do so.
Are there any questions, guys? Aaron.
Yeah, so as much as I support the concept of an outreach service for sex-based workers and helping them as much as possible, I still question how much we've done around the safety for the girls that work in that industry. And I look at the Health and Safety Act and all of the hoops and legislation that other people who are contractors or workers in every environment have to go through to keep themselves safe. And my question is around the health and safety aspects of this industry, given the number of murders, rapes and torture that have come through this industry being on the streets of our city, and what we've done about it, and if we potentially have any liability over allowing an industry to take place that is so dangerous. That's all.
Ooh.
Sure.
Probably.
Is that a question for
Was that a question for?
Well, or it might be more fit for Ian around our liability.
Yeah, okay.
It's not.
Ian.
I think I can briefly answer it. In terms of what you're being asked to do today, which is to grant $40,000 to the outreach organisation, I don't think there's any issue of liability in terms of us with regard to the street workers. So I don't think it's an issue for today's resolution or consideration of the matter.
Right. So if you want to bring it up in a different
when
forum.
when would that be an issue?
If you want to ask LSU to provide you with some advice around that, then we're happy to do that.
Yeah, I would be happy to get that.
Okay.
Okay, I'll undertake to do that.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions before we just start the debate? Yep, Anne.
Thanks for this amazing work you've been doing. I'm just wondering, with the support from the community, I believe there was a letter written to recommend that this outreach worker was actually supported in this way from the community who have been involved in this. Is that correct?
That is correct, and I received advice that wasn't able to be circulated to the council, but a resident north of Bealey Ave did write a letter of support and has been very happy with the voluntary work that's been undertaken, and was particularly supportive of the addition, which would come into place if this paid work were funded, of having a street outreach coordinator who is contactable 24/7, because that currently is a gap in the services provided.
Yeah, so this has come to us because, if you remember, in 2nd of November 2017, we resolved to set up the street-based sex work collaborative working group as a result of a few deputations by some residents in the community. Part of that resolution said that the council would agree to consider funding in support of initiatives presented by the collaborative working group, which is what we've got today. This is a collaboration of the community, council staff, council members, the community board, who have got together and they've been working, and we've got Bridie here from the Prostitutes Collective as well. Sorry, what's the actual name of it? Yeah, that's the one, sorry. They're here to support, and the whole issue is actually has done quite a 180 turn. There was a lot of angst in that community around the street-based sex work that was going on, especially north of Beeley Ave. And the work that the collaborative group have done has actually turned that 180, and actually, you know, there's been a lot of concerted effort to communicate to the residents and actually get them on board, and actually people are sort of creating their own little community there. But one part of the missing piece is this outreach worker, which will actually support the street-based sex workers and also facilitate the need with the residents as well. So this is actually going to help with the safety of the workers on the street, and actually help communicate what's going on with the residents there who are interested. And one of the residents who did come and do the deputation is all for this, and he is very supportive of this, and I do hope that we actually get this this passes, because this is a direct resolution or direct result of that earlier resolution.
I'm very pleased we have this report, and I'm also pleased that the community board have put in a significant amount of funding towards this. And I think it's great that a community-led project is actually working, when it was very clear that the previous legalistic one, which would have imposed some further restrictive conditions, clearly wasn't going to work. So I think this is a great outreach. I think it's going to be so important, including around the health and safety parts. That clearly the outreach worker will be involved with it, you know, supporting the prostitutes to have safe conditions, or as safe as possible. So, yep, an example of where, in fact, I think it's necessary is I know that Housing First program have approached many of the street workers and haven't had success in that area of housing needs for them. So I think there's a lot of work, preparatory work to be done, which an outreach worker can, and I'm sure will do, and I'm sure very successfully. So I'm also very pleased about the work that's been done, and this is timely to actually support the program with this funding.
Thank you. This is the oldest profession in the world, and we'll always have it. So I guess it's about how can we make it more safe for those participating, and in regard to what Phil's just mentioned, for all those on the street, whether street begging, those homeless, those working at night. We have these various streams of work, two of which Anne is working on. It feeds into our housing subcommittee work as well. The reasons for people working on the street are numerous and complex, and it's never a kind of a black and white issue. So I take on board Aaron's comments, but what can we do to fund it and make people's lives safer?
This is another example of how together as a community we can work together to solve some of our community problems. So it's we have got this model working beautifully with our outreach worker working with the street beggars, as Phil has talked about, and I think this is another example of collaborative partnership in action. And I think it's a good example of how the Capital Endowment Fund can be used to specifically target quickly areas where we have recognised that something like this has to happen. So thank you so much for the work that you have done, Amy, and the team. It's been amazing, and we will really appreciate what you've done.
I first just clarify it's not the oldest profession. That's that's actually a line from a play or a poem by Homer or something called The Wall, if you look it up. But it gets used a lot as a term, so I do forgive Glenn because we've all heard it probably 100 times.
Well, it's in the Bible, so I should know.
Yeah, well,
so it must be true.
Where do you go after that?
It's on the internet.
My only point around my concerns around this is it's an incredibly dangerous industry. The street worker industry, I'm not as hung up on the brothels or the call-outs or any other arrangements, but the sex working on the street in a modern era just does not seem like a good outcome for a lot of people involved. Sometimes the clients and that get a bit ripped off or stood over and things themselves as well, but it's the safety of the girls that really concerns me. I've got the names of the recent murders all in front of me written down. I'm not going to read them out because they're all well known, but these are citizens of our city. These are human beings that should just not be treated in that way under any circumstance. Our country has a real problem of sexual violence. We don't speak about it very often, but we need to do something about it, and by allowing this to still take place on our streets without the checks and balances, I admit that yes, an outreach worker helps, but it does not give these girls the safety they need. They hop into a car with a stranger and go where they don't know where they're going to perform the acts. We know what they're performing, but there's no safety in that. There's no other industry would allow female staff members to go and do that. It just makes no sense that we still allow this to happen. So for crying out loud, at some point we need to start protecting these very vulnerable people who, a lot of them are sexual abuse victims themselves, and they choose to get into a profession that has some very serious outcomes at times. And yes, they are grown human beings, but they have a number of other issues. So let's try and move to a safer community somehow.
But just to wrap up, I've been really impressed with the Working Party, and I want to acknowledge all the people that have contributed. I haven't been on the Working Party myself, but can I say that working together to identify actions to make this a more safe and be done in a way that minimises the impact on a local community that were getting very angry, I think has been a really positive thing. And you know, I just think if you're worried about people's well-being, then this is one of the best things that you can contribute to, because having a human response to this rather than a legal or a judicial response, I think will make a huge difference. And we've already seen some of that. It is regrettable that this project actually has taken so long to get funded, but you know, we are where we are today, and I hope that people support it. It's a really important project for our city. And I want to acknowledge the huge work that NZPC have done as well, because you know there has been a lot of angst and anger by some, but I think with the positive work that's been going on in the background for over a year now, we're starting to see some really positive results. So I really support this. The Community Board agreed when we had the first report from the Working Party to fund the security camera, because we saw that as a real priority in terms of safety. But it was felt that given that council established this Working Party, that council should also take some responsibility to funding its response, and I agree with that approach.